Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. How are you guys doing today? Okay, so let's just go here and hopefully I can do this. Okay, good. Okay, so today we will continue with our refutation of Haris Sultan's book. I'm gonna keep today's live stream short because really there isn't much to dive in today's chapter because it's just reputation of uh, bad arguments. So I'm gonna keep it very short, inshallah ta'ala. So let's start off with what the chapter is. In chapter 5 of his book, Haris Sultan talks about the character of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So before I get to the refutation itself, I wanna talk about the video I did on his morality and his moral argument. So Haris Sultan is what we call a consequentialist and a utilitarianist. So his concept of morality is to basically minimize pain and maximize pleasure in a society without harming anyone. This sounds good. It sounds good to a normal person, but it has holes. It has a lot of philosophical holes. And it is moral subjectivism. Okay? And we also talked about the open question. Okay? The open question argument. So basically, Haris Sultan jumps from the is to ought. Okay, he cannot differentiate between moral values and scientific facts. What is doesn't mean what ought to be. We've already talked about this. So basically, what I'm trying to say is Haris Sultan does not have a ground for morality. We have completely refuted his view on morality itself. Haris Sultan has no basis on morality that he can stand on. Okay. So with that being said, when Haris Sultan talks about morality, due to him having no base that he can stand on, all of his arguments fall flat. So this whole chapter, chapter 5, has to do with morality. Okay? Has to do with what? Morality. So one way to refute his whole chapter is to say, Haris Sultan, you have not proven why your view of morality is true and correct. Hence, you cannot even begin to prove why the character of Muhammad is morally bad. Right? Because if you cannot prove the base, then you cannot prove the conclusion from the base. Simple as that. But I will obviously be doing more than just that. So let's begin. So he first talks about that people think that Muhammad is a great role model for the human society according to the Muslims, right? And he says the only reason is because Muhammad is seen as a prophet and is due to ignorance. Okay, now let's see. Let's see. Are we really ignorant? Are we really ignorant or are we not? Okay, so I'm gonna give you a few quotations. Okay, inshallah ta'ala. I'll give you guys a few quotations. So let's see. 113. Let me just go here. So yeah. Now, the problem with Haris Sultan is he's not an alim, he is not a scholar, and he makes a lot of mistakes. Now he says that this has to do, Muhammad is seen as role model because of ignorance. How are we ignorant? How are we not supposed to take a person who said love for others what you love for yourself as a role model? Okay, how are we supposed to not do that? Prophet said that love for others what you love for yourself. Don't harm anyone with your tongue or hands. Okay, the best amongst you are those who have the best manners and characters. This is our prophet. So how are you not supposed to take that as a role model? Now, I'm going to be refuting him by using a book that is called The Blessing of God by another author. It's a good book. It is used as a refutation for Haris Sultan, and I'll be using some quotes from there, inshallah ta'ala, as well. Now, let's see what Haris Sultan has to. So first he says that Prophet ﷺ was a violent individual. First of all, Haris fails to even substantiate that claim properly. Secondly, once again, you have no basis for morality, Haris. You cannot make that claim as being morally wrong. So now let's read. When I was a little boy growing up under the influence of Islam, I was told that Muhammad was so gentle and loving. He once attended to the ill woman who used to throw rubbish at him. Of course, this is a weak hadith. Everyone who's a student of knowledge knows this. Okay, so he quotes a weak hadith. He says, "Ooh, just because you were taught a weak hadith, okay, or sorry, it's not a weak hadith. As far as I know, it's like almost baseless, right?" Okay. Is anywhere? Okay, right. So yeah. So he just because you were taught that doesn't mean that everyone was taught that. Okay. So first of all, there's like you being taught a weak hadith, basically a unestablished tradition, doesn't mean Muhammad was violent. First of all, and as I quote, and I'm quoting from, as I said, I'm quoting from Sahih Bukhari, all the three hadiths that are quoted, right? Love for others what you love for yourself. Don't harm anyone with your tongue or hands. The best amongst you are those who have the best manners and character. Right? This is all three narrations are from Sahih Bukhari. So, does it not prove that he was not violent? How can someone who is violent say love for others what you love for yourself? Right? It's very easy to refute what Haris Sultan is trying to prove here. Let's move on. Upon the orders of Muhammad, Amr ibn Umayyad and Sufyan to kill, when he failed and it became the hunted, he took refuge in a cave where he met one-eyed Bedouin shepherd, and I won't be able to say as long as I live. So he gives, once again, Haris, you're making these large claims, trying to attack the, you're trying to attack the character of Prophet Muhammad, right? I can start by quoting a lot of acts of kindness, okay, of Prophet Muhammad that shows his mercy, that shows his love, okay, how charitable he was. Prophet Muhammad didn't used to eat meat, didn't used to cook. There wouldn't be fire or smoke in his house for months. And he would look after others. This is how kind and loving the Prophet ﷺ was. Okay? I can do that to show that he wasn't violent. And look at the whole history. Look at his prophethood. Does it prove that this individual was a violent individual, or does it prove that this individual was a loving individual? And any historian, any honest historian would come to the conclusion Muhammad ﷺ was not a violent individual. Okay? It's very easy to come to the conclusion. Okay? Give me a second here. Let's see. Now, as for, let's see which issue he's tackling here. Haris is talking about the issue of, and I went to him and again the most hateful. Okay. Now I don't really see. Okay, first of all, he gives us this narration where it doesn't even prove that Muhammad was himself violent. So, once again, what are you trying to do, Haris? So the other thing that he does is he shows womanizing. Okay. So one of the main ways Haris tries to lure his audience towards him. Okay. He talks about he talks about women, that how badly women were treated by Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he basically gives pages and pages of pages about women, even though we all know that the life, the livelihood, and their way of living of women was better, became better after the Prophet ﷺ, not worse. Everyone knows this. In the Arab culture, it was like first thing that the Arabs loved were their sons, then their donkeys, then their women. Okay, that's how importance was given to women. When Prophet ﷺ came and the Quran was revealed, and it was revealed that no woman or no man, basically I'm paraphrasing from the Quran, are better than each other except in taqwa, except in God consciousness. So what is Harith Sultan trying to claim here? What is Harith Sultan trying to even prove here? Okay. Okay, so now let's look at his examples. Throughout human history, men have wanted three things above everything: power, woman, and legacy. We have already seen what violence Muhammad was capable of to gain power. Now, see, he's implying, first of all, look what he's saying. Throughout human history, men have wanted three things: power, woman, and legacy. Muhammad ﷺ was given power. He was basically, power was given to him in a platter and he rejected, because that wasn't his mission. He wanted monotheism, not power. Harith Sultan is completely out of touch with history, established history. Historians agree that Prophet ﷺ, in stages in his life, lived like a very poor individual. But Harith Sultan seems to completely ignore this and talks about how he wanted power. This only proves the dishonesty of Harith Sultan. Okay. Now he first talks about the first woman. Now he goes through the wives, first of all, the wives of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So he talks about Khadija Radhiyallahu anha, that he married a rich, independent woman who was a trader, who was older than him, who was a merchant. Okay, and he was just 25 years old. And he tries to give a context to this. He tries to give a context such as Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam married her for the power leverage that he could have gotten. Okay, what is the proof for that? That he's implying. Every narration that we have from Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam rather goes against this. Rather than goes against this. Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam worked, okay, for his wife. Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and their relationship was so strong. Every evidence we have of Khadija Radhiyallahu anha with Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam shows true love, rather than this kind of heinous love that Harith Sultan is rather talking about. Okay, so Harith Sultan has made like multiple failed attempts to discredit Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Okay. Okay, so he talks about this malice intent of the Prophet with Khadija. When Prophet ﷺ loved Khadija radhiyallahu anha so much that once Aisha radhiyallahu anha said to the Prophet, I'm reading from the passage, you act as if there is no other woman than Khadija in the world. Okay, now she's saying this. Aisha radhiyallahu anha is saying this. Why do you always mention an old woman who lost her teeth through age and died a long time ago? Allah gave you a better one than her. This is Bukhari. Okay, this is in Bukhari. So, Prophet ﷺ loved Khadija radhiyallahu anha so much that he used to remember her. And Aisha radhiyallahu anha used to even mention that, why do you still love her and talk about her so much? Does this sound like a man who is violent, who has this heinous intent, malicious intent towards a woman? Does this sound like a womanizer? Why did Harith seem to mention this? Okay, like, does it not show ill intent from Harith rather than Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? Let's go to the next slide. There is not a lot written about Sodom and Zam, However, according to At-Tabari, she was the second wife of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Some historians disagree on the order of Muhammad's marriage, as some believe Aisha was Muhammad's second wife. Either way, all historians agree that Muhammad consummated his marriage with Sauda before Aisha, as she was too young for marriage to be consummated. Sauda was a tall, dark-skinned widow when Muhammad asked to marry. So agreed and married. Now this is all. Now Muhammad was probably impressed by the hardship she went through in accepting Islam and wanted to reward her. In any case, there is obviously nothing wrong in marrying another woman once you are widowed. The sad part is later on Muhammad lost interest in Sauda and she was ignored in favor of Aisha. Now he just made that claim. Okay, he just made that claim. Okay, now let's read about who Sauda bin Zama was. Right. So now, okay, so so now basically, I believe what Haris Sultan is hinting at here is how Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam moved to the house of Aisha, but there's a reasoning behind this. Okay, the reasoning behind this is basically the house of Aisha radhiyallahu anha. Okay, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was ill and he couldn't move places. So he took permission from all other wives, including Sauda radhiyallahu anha, to stay at his central home, i.e. the home of Aisha radhiyallahu anha. And as he was a prophet, all of the wives allowed. They had no issue. But for some reason, Haris, Lanatullah alayhi, has issues with that. Okay, now let's move on. After Khadija's death, it seemed Muhammad's mission was to marry as many women as possible. After marrying Sauda in 620, he married Aisha bint Abu Bakr around the same time in 620 AD. Aisha was 6 at the time. However, this marriage was consummated until 628, until Aisha turned 9. Aisha was the daughter of Muhammad's closest friend Abu Bakr, whom he often calls his brother. Some scholars are actually so embarrassed by this. Shut up. Just shut up. So yeah, what is the problem here? Faris, go. What are the problem here? According to utilitarianism, okay? According to utilitarianism, if someone mature can consent, is biologically and mentally ready, okay, even at the age of 9, there's nothing morally wrong with it. Even in utilitarianism. Okay? I don't think someone who in a debate publicly admitted that incest is not absolutely wrong should be talking about what is moral and what is immoral. I'm just going to leave this one at that. Okay. So yeah. So as for the actually, let's do this because then people are gonna ask me later on. Aisha, this view that Aisha was 6 and the marriage was consummated when she was 9 years old. This is a firm, basically established history at this point. Okay, there are very good narrations to establish that. There is nothing immoral as long as she had hit puberty. She was old enough. Basically, if she was old enough to be married, and then Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam got married, that's completely fine. And historically, there wasn't any issue with this. Even if you look at the law of Germany and what is now modern day America of Europeans, you will see marriages even younger than this, as young as 7. Marriage being consummated as young as 7, and this being legal. In countries even today, there are a lot of countries where 13, 12 years old can get married with parental consent. You need to understand that due to parental consent being involved, okay, this isn't malicious. The fact that there is parental consent, basically Abu Bakr's consent, shows that this was the norm. He didn't have any issue with it. Okay, so let's move on. Fourth one. 2 years after his marriage with Aisha, Muhammad went on to marry his second half-created who was later on into a book with Usman. Now he's not even talking about it. He's just mentioning the woman he married. Now, at this point, Haris Sultan Okay. Now, at this point, Haris Sultan is just mentioning the multiple wives that Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had. There is nothing immoral about this in Haris Sultan's own morality. Polygamy, or polygyny to be precise, is not immoral, even by Haris Sultan's standards. There's nothing at all immoral about polygyny. So, what is the argument that Haris is trying to make? It's completely absurd. There is no basis. He just what Haris is trying to do is saying, "Oh, I left Islam because the Prophet married multiple wives, and multiple wives is just a bad thing. It just is. Okay, in the Western culture, it is. In the Western Christian culture, it is. Okay, and even in the Western like liberal modern culture that is basically secular culture that is coming about, even there it's not. Okay, so Haris Sultan is just trying to make a fallacious argument, as always. The ninth woman. After Muhammad married to Zainab, things took a turn and he became more brazen. Perhaps after realizing he could get away with anything by making up a verse, he went at it with almost no opposition. Just 2 months after marrying Zainab, he brought another woman in his life, Rayana. What is her? I think it's mistaken in spelling. Zayd ibn Amr, okay, well, massacred his entire tribe, but then after conquering them, he beheaded some 600, 900 men from ages of 14 and above. The criterion for beheading was any male who had pubic hair, as they were considered men, and therefore beheaded regardless of reason for attacking Qurayza. We will focus on Muhammad's cruelty and his support of sex slavery. Here's what happened. Now he goes on to say what happens. I'm just gonna refute that directly. Okay. Now, 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 first of all, the incident with Zainab bin Jash. Now I'm gonna start reading from the book. The most interesting thing found with regarding Haris wrote about this topic, especially regarding the noble wives of Prophet ﷺ, is that he referred to At-Tabari as his premium source in mentioning details about the topic. Well, let me describe what Tabari really is. It is not a book of hadith, but a book of history, basically historical analysis of the Quran and Sunnah. I can perfectly understand why Haris didn't consult the real primary source of Islam, i.e., the Hadith, and went for the books of history because he didn't find anything authentic against Islam or the Prophet of Islam. So he went straight to the weakest considered sources in Islam. He did the same in narrating the incident regarding Zainab bin Jahsh. Let me first describe you the authenticity of the whole incident. Basically, Haris has copy pasted the incident from Orientalists who mistranslated it, and hence Haris ended up mistranslating as well. There is a famous proverb in Urdu which says, "Nakal ke liye bhi akal ki zarurat hai," that you need a brain even to cheat. This is exactly what has happened in this case, as Haris didn't know Arabic, so he wouldn't know what was written in the real text. Basically, the objectionable thing in the narration is the word hasira, which means an uncovered head and not a nude body. How can a woman sit naked in his house as well? So this is mistranslation and word done deliberately to make something out of nothing, but it was still an unsuccessful attempt yet again. Secondly, this narration is related by Ibn Sa'd, Tabari, and others on this occasion, although this narration can be elaborated in a manner which no longer leaves rooms for any objection. The truth is that this tale is absolutely fictitious and false from start to finish. It is proven to be fabricated both in terms of riwayat, chains of narration, and dirayat, meaning. As far as riwayat is concerned, it is enough to state that this narration is primarily related by Waqida and Abdullah bin Amir Aslami, both of whom are looked upon by scholars as being absolutely weak and unreliable. Simple as that. So basically, Haris Sultan has no idea how to look into these matters and how to extract sources. So he's cherry picking at this point. Haris Sultan is basically cherry picking whatever he can to make Islam look bad. Simple as that. Now he talks about sex slavery. So woman of the right hand, you need to understand the concept of sex slavery. Okay, the concept of sex slavery. Okay, first of all, slaves or abd in the context of Islam is very different when it comes to the concept of the Western culture, with the Western paradigm of slaves. Let's say that for Islam, we respect and treat the slaves nicely. Okay, basically as a part of a bigger family or the second circle of the family. Okay, or the outskirt or outside of the circle of the family. Okay, something like that. So, but the point being is we respect them, we take care of them. Okay, we show love to them. Okay, especially if they're Muslim. Okay, because as I earlier said, okay, all Muslims are but brothers. Okay, if he's a Muslim, you cannot treat him bad. Okay, so okay. Yes, here is what happened. Muhammad behaved like a warlord and a king. Anyone who no longer believed in him had died. Okay, so yeah, let me just. Now, okay, so where was I? Yeah, so I'm reading here. Hmm. Okay, so now let's talk about critical. Muhammad behaved like a warlord and a king. Anyone who no longer believed in him had to die. Although there is a direct verse in the Quran that dictates death for apostasy, there are various hadiths to show Muhammad wants anyone leaving Islam to be put to death. No, that's completely false. Okay, so let's end with the slavery part. Okay, so slave, first of all, the Islamic paradigm about slave is the way Islam is built, the Sharia, the law. You slowly lose slaves. Basically, you break a promise, free a slave. Fast, free a slave. So there are so many ways to free a slave, and so few ways you can acquire one. But the Islamic paradigm and the Islamic social structure is made in such a way by God to reduce slaves. And that is why the slave trade, when it was followed correctly, or I shouldn't say slave trade because it has a negative connotation. Basically, when slavery was there in the Islamic culture and it was practiced, basically the way that abd were taken care of, the way that has told us to, the numbers reduces, okay, and a lot of people would become slaves because how well they were treated. Okay, now I believe that like they cannot like Muslims cannot become slave. There might be a few exceptional cases, okay, and that is why I mentioned it. Okay, Wallahu ta'ala. Okay. So, behave like a warlord and a king. Anyone who no longer believed in him had to die. Although, okay, so yeah, he's basically making this jump. Okay, uh, anyone who um, didn't believe in him had to die, or leaves Islam had to die. No, okay, you need to understand this. Like I talked about the whole structure, the Islamic structure of the Sharia, and the laws. The thing is that if it is critical, okay, if Islam is critical, he's basically Sultan is basically saying that Muhammad didn't want people leaving, so he used his power to kill people. No, it's not like that. You need to understand it's not like that. The reason there is an apostasy law at place is more like uh, to keep people in check. Okay, to keep the structure in check. Basically, how we have laws that soldiers or spies have to keep by. They cannot talk about certain things, or it's seen as betraying the country. And people are and have been put to death for betraying the country, for speaking or saying something that they shouldn't have publicly or to others. Now, this leads them to death. Now, this for Har Sultan, this would make sense. Okay, but when Islam does it, because if you leave Islam, you're betraying the religion. Okay, you're and also apostasy law isn't just like, oh, you do this, heads off. There's still debates that are done, discussions that are had, and scholars have, and every specific case of apostasy is looked into in different ways regarding the nuances. Okay, so Haris Sultan obviously doesn't know all that. So yeah. Now this is the last slide. Cult leader. Muhammad was a cult leader. All religions are basically cults. Only the number of subscribers to the ideology determined. Yeah, liberalism is a cult. Darwinism is a cult. Haris Sultan's followers who are Hindus, they are basically a cult as well. Okay. Now the thing is that I kind of highlighted everything, but I highlighted one specific thing in green, and that is the word good. Why did I do that? Because I don't need to refute all of this. Okay? So first he said that Muhammad was a cult leader. Now, he didn't define a cult. Okay, he didn't really define a cult. Okay, he just said that there's we want loyalty, we want women, we want power, and these things were given to Muhammad, and he was hence a cult leader, and so on and so forth. Absolute garbage and rubbish, as we have shown already, by proving how the Prophet Muhammad's character actually was. Okay. Now I underlined and highlighted this word good specifically in green. Why? Because as we just keep going back to the point that Haris Sultan doesn't have an actual base for his moral arguments and paradigm. He is making absurd claims regarding morality. He has absolutely no basis about morality. You are a subjectivist. You are a utilitarian. You cannot claim something to be objectively or absolutely good or bad. This is just your opinion. Okay? Stop saying things are good. Say they're good in my worldview or good in my opinion. At least say that. Okay? So yeah. With that, let's end today's live, inshallah ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.